What is up, y'all? This is your boy Yannick coming at you with another live reaction. So, just as a precursor, last stream got hit with a copyright strike. So, it's gone. I technically do have the VOD on my computer, but I'm not going to upload any components from that. Um, just for the sake of not risking any more copyright strikes coming through. But it's we did that we did the chapter going into part one. Unfortunate because I actually feel like I had some decent theories in there. I might go and edit some of that stuff just to change the background a little bit or something. See if we can maybe salvage something out of it. I don't know. Uh, I did enjoy last week's bonus chapter. I didn't think it would actually be plot relevant. I was right. So I also didn't know if it was going to be like a real chapter or not until I started reading it. But it is what it is. But yeah, let's just get right into chapter 113. So yeah, I'm also gonna make sure that you can't see too much of the chapter to avoid any copyright strike reasons. You guys can tell what I'm reading. So yeah, let me just make sure I don't have Shueisha trying to smite my channel left and right. Uh, with that being said, actually, let me make sure I have music set. All right. Hmm. So okay, so we're starting with a flashback. It looks like February 18th. A large island suddenly appears in coastal waters near southeast Japan. Between it and Honshu is an island called Irishima, which is part of the Chiba Prefecture. During a record-breaking earthquake 34 hours prior, a vein of an unidentified mineral was exposed on Irishima's surface. The ore is highly reactive to spirit energy and produces astronomical power, but burst when the two come in contact. Immediately, it was designated as Japan's most critical resource. All right, so we're getting a bit of a lore on the Datsensaki. I'm gonna learn about like how we got the ore, where it's coming from. We go with that. Uh, all right, so 2 years later, Tokyo. Obviously, the black market has been established. People are moving these things. Is that it? Yes. Hey, what up, Cameron Bailey? If nobody got me, Cameron Bailey got me. What up, Alves? Is that it? Yes. See, the Soya cover story. So, one, I did enjoy the fact that Soya like woke up, no memory, was still obviously freakishly built different. But I like the fact that when somebody went to look through his past, he was called out. Instantly was like, "Yo, if this is your version of love, you gotta go." Um, just all around, it was actually because Soya does not understand how twisted he is, despite the fact that he's supposed to be smart, and so he's like trying to find all these ways to figure out who he used to be, what his purpose is, all this other stuff, and he's just utterly rejected for the freak he is. Greatly appreciated that like there was no punches spared. And like Kaguarabachi isn't necessarily the nicest universe, but it's not always the most cruel. So it was kind of nice to see him just like be fully blasted, receive just absolute consequences for who he is as a person. Because like you should not be able to be that shitty of a person and not face real meaningful consequences. Which I mean, going forward, I probably will just read any bonus chapters we get on stream too. Uh, I might do Don to Don tomorrow too, just because I've actually been interested in that and how that's been going. So we might get Don to Don, and I may even do Chainsaw Man this week. I have an interview next Saturday, so I have no idea like how that's going to impact my schedule if I get that job, but we'll see. But at least for the next week, I think I'm going to try to do more streams just to spend more time with you guys. Uh, Dude, I did a 7-hour gaming stream just to hang out with one of my friends. So, hey, Tiger Blaster. So, yeah. All right. So, chapter 113, Rock. Get the title officially. All right, let's. Isn't it rather small? It's plenty powerful enough. To obliterate an entire city, if you can wield it properly, of course. Even the government has yet to figure out how to do that. That's the nature of this ore. A sorcerer of your caliber, and you ended up like this? Yeah, I should have charged you another 200 million or so. Did you have a run in with government ops? No. Huh? Then who? There's nobody else, right? Arishima's an uninhabited island. You're wrong. There were people there. We know the government's been having trouble extracting the ore, even though it's supposedly uninhabited, and now I know why. They appear to be human, but not like ordinary sorcerers. Okay, hold up. I mean, I figured that we were always going to find out that the war with the island was about resources and wasn't actually, they attacked or anything like that. And we're already getting the reveal that the government was trying to raid the island for its resources. So, surprise, surprise, they were trying to bring some freedom, and it turned out that there were people there. I hate when I have to blow my nose on stream. They were assassins sent by Shokoku. Shokoku? You mean from the so-called large island that suddenly surfaced in the ocean near Urishima? Inhabitants from there, but the government said it was a cluster of mutated seaweed. Yeah, no. The amount of government lying in this chapter is phenomenal. We're already lying through our teeth left and right. Excuse me? That was a very early assessment, right? The government has released no actual information since then. That's because they don't know anything. And all right. And we do see that like it mutated seaweed, it looks like just like a huge throbbing mass of trees popping out of the ocean. This is as far as we can go. Is something wrong? No, the boat just can't go any closer. It's physically impossible. It's surrounded by a powerful force field. Nobody can approach beyond a certain distance. Since its appearance 2 years ago, nobody knows what lies beyond that point. However, some of the mariners sent to investigate have reported sightings of what look like humans. They're the assassins I crossed paths with. Humans on this island that surfaced in the ocean? Yeah. Yeah, buddy. Then why are we calling it a country? Why name it Shokoku? All right, so we're really getting into the. So I like this. This is a really, really good way to start this act off because we're basically doing the let's do a massive lore dump right out the gate of Act 2, which lets you know that there's going to be some real intensity to this. And we're going to actually have to wrestle with some things here. So I'm okay with that. The force field is large enough to cover a couple of cities, and so strong nobody's been able to breach it for 2 years. It's not humanly possible. Either they simply have powers beyond our reckoning, or it has to do with the astronomical energy of this ore. Perhaps they have the Datsensaki in an advanced civilization that knows how to use it. That's my theory. I don't think you have to be necessarily advanced. You just have to be attuned. This is the world of sorcery. You've lost me. So you're saying it's populated? Possibly. But if that's true, what cause do they have to send assassins? Who knows? I mean, if you control Datsensaki, something that the modern government doesn't feel like they could utilize properly, typically, if it's going to be a culture that's built around something like this, their technological evolution is going to go a different direction. So if you have access to Datsensaki, You may not need vehicles in the traditional sense or how we perceive them. You have instead maybe you want to go with like magical hoverboards or teleportation pods or whatever the case may be. Just something that lets you move around, but it may not be, oh, we have cars, trucks, all these other things. Also, if you could just tap into magic through a stone, like you can see how these like the island just looks like a mangrove colony. You're not gonna need traditional like structures or anything like that. Uh, I've been getting my daughter into dragon related materials so that I can get her to read Aragon and the inheritance cycle later. So similar to how the elves in Do Weldenvarden in the inheritance cycle, because they're magical, they live in the trees, they sing to the plants. So they like their houses are just trees that have like opened up and allowed people to live there, like giant trees that have been shaped to allow dragons to roost in them. That's probably what you would have on this island of people who are using like Datansaki if they're that compatible. They wouldn't need to necessarily have all the traditional trappings of. So you'd want to protect that. It's similar to the North Sentinel Island people in real life who they have their own life. They're not necessarily ready for the diseases that we've developed outside of there, so we don't need to be doing all that. They probably don't want Japan getting its hands on this powerful ore. But why hide then? Why not just make a big splash? And they're probably preparing. They emerged from the depths of the ocean, right? So they have to get used to the sunlight. They need to train for land battle. They're probably doing military exercises over there as we speak. Exercises, yes. Preparing for war. Oh, we got Sheba in the building? You done talking? Who are you? Hey, security. And they pull the everybody getting weapons, don't move. Instant speed blitz. Sorry, I moved. Oh. All right, so Sheba took everybody outside and threw them straight into the sky. Let's see. And now they're all landing on the ground. You're awfully quiet. You must be Togo Sheba. If you are, I know I can't beat you. Bastard. The Soga clan's guardian. You call yourself a sorcerer. You're the government's dog. Huh. So, if he's the Soga clan's guardian, that means he used to work with Akimura Soga, which means his relation and protection to Chihiro's family is a byproduct of him having known Chihiro's mom originally, not necessarily through his bond with Rokuhira. Okay. Okay. So now we know that Shiba was originally tied to the Sword Master and not this. Okay. Hold up. Whoa, death cries. You're late, Masahiro. Hey, Mr. Shiba, what are you doing? Stepping on this guy's neck and burning him? You shouldn't kick and burn him too much. We don't want him dead. We got questions for him. Hey, what up, Tangerine? We don't want him dead. We got questions for him. The guy was on the right track. He was already anticipating war with Shikoku. Whoa, pretty sharp. Dude, he needs to not interfere. Yeah, seriously. It's been 2 years since the appearance of Shikoku. There have been repeated skirmishes over the vein of ore on Irishima. They stick to diversionary tactics rather than head-on battles. They seem satisfied to prevent us from mining the ore. For now, that is. War. Our job is to prevent that worst-case scenario. Shikoku and the Datansaki appeared almost simultaneously. There's clearly a deep connection between the two. First of all, we need to understand this ore. It's Shiba. Shiba, mission status, complete. What about the other thing? Oh, that didn't go through. What do you mean that didn't go through? Hold up. I've said it over and over. The guy's too young. Besides, we're talking about a low-life weapons dealer who barely answers his calls. He's 1 year older than me. That's a bit harsh. We can't entrust the nation's most critical resource to a guy like that. This is highly sensitive information. We've hired other trusted veterans, swordsmiths as consultants. I'm telling you, nobody can touch this guy's skill level. A select team of scientists are conducting ongoing research. It's been 2 years. They've gotten basically nowhere. Sorry, but that's just how it is. That's how challenging this material is. Understood. I need to make a quick stop and then I'll be back. Copy that. Wait a sec. Where exactly? A quick stop? Dude, your expression is so evil. I'm taking this to show him. Sete War arc. Oh! Oh! Yo! I got chills. Hold up. Hold up. Ooh wee. Let's talk about it. Hokazano, you cooking like this? Hold up. Hold up. Because now we got to think about this, right? Hold up. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Right here. Up here. In my eyes. We're cooking. Are we cooking or are we cooked? That's the question I got to ask you. Are we cooking or are we cooked? Hey, look at me. Look at me. Look at me looking at you. Look at me looking at you. Okay, so let's just process this real quick, right? Let's go ahead and move the mic up here too. Why not? We're going from Soga whooping everybody's ass, making everybody look dumb, making everybody look goofy, and now we're getting how Rokuhiro was looped into the Seitei War. We're going to get the information on how Soga got the first blade, why he was given the first blade. We see that it looks like the catalyst for all this messed up shit may actually have been Shiba, which explains also that he's been working with the Rokuhiras partially out of guilt this whole time. Oh, holy. Okay, so we got Chihiro. Okay, fuck. Okay, so this manga has been about like sins of the father, right? Like atonement. Are you guilty for what your family's done before you? What do you need to do to make up for that if you are? And now we're seeing like before this, Rokuhira was a simple swordsmith working, trying to make weapons, and Shiba, against the will of the government, looped him into this and was like, "Yo, dog, you gonna be making some enchanted blades? Not necessarily making enchanted blades, but just I think you could do something with this Daten that other people cannot." We also see that they are the attackers because the people of Shikoku, like I said, they weren't interested in having these people show up, take a bunch of ore, do stuff, because this is like the foundation, the bedrock of their society, right? So this is how they operate, how they live, how they breathe, what they do, how like they have a barrier that nobody can get through. So this also lets me know that like the Magatsumi and the Shunichi, like the reason why it's so vague and so I just pull in energy is more than likely because they needed something to get through that barrier. They needed something to get through. They couldn't just have it be, oh, we're just gonna hope for the best, hope we could get through. No, they needed to get through that. In order to get through it, they found a way around basically respecting these people's autonomy. What's more is that we see that Soga, and like okay, so the Soga clan, it's like Akamura Soga, the Swordmaster, isn't just some one-off character. He's somebody that Shiba had a very well-established relationship, somebody he believed in, and somebody that, and ultimately, like his family is tied to Shiba. We don't know how Togo Shiba like got involved with them or why he's their guardian, or if it's like his family just protects that family and that's their legacy, or what's going on. My guess is that the majority of the Soga clan is actually dead at this point, and so you don't have any like parents of Soga. Maybe it's because Akamura himself went and killed his entire clan. I don't know, but the fact that we're actually about to do this deep dive. Also, I really hope that this arc isn't interspersed with a lot of cutaways to Chihiro. I want to see if Hokazano can do, what we saw Horikoshi do during My Villain Academia, what we've seen Tagashi do currently with the Succession arc. Can he and will he trust himself to take a step away from who he's told us is his main character and say, this lore, this information, this growth, this data is more important than just focusing on this main character? Does he have the dog in him, chat? Let me refresh in case I ain't been seeing some messages, because I feel like this is a crazy big reveal, and I feel like I'm not seeing any messages about this reveal, and that's crazy to me. No, okay, I'm good. I'm good. Look, because if we're gonna have Soga, so we're getting the Soga backstory, the backstory for the Swordmaster. We're getting the Rokuhiro backstory. We're getting a Shiba backstory. This also may be a red flag for Shiba's life, but that's okay. He's a mentor character. We always got to be ready for them to die. Like, genuinely, because I think he's got that dog in him. I think he's willing to do it. I feel like he's been testing the waters. We also then we get more Samura, and Samura is one of my favorite characters. Because the other thing is that I want to know exactly. Like we kind of we tested that during the HQ raid. We didn't like spend too much time with it, but we always knew we were on a timer, right? We knew Chihiro was about to pop up. It was just like, all right, when is he gonna show up? When's he gonna show up? When is he gonna show up? We also get the option to see like younger Hiyuki, so maybe the introduction and like we get lore on the flame bone in this arc. Because Hiyuki's been missing for a while. So this is a good chance to give us lore on that. What is the flame bone? Where did that come from? What are other magical weapons that exist in this world? Man. We also get the chance to see like not necessarily the prime version, but like more combat ready versions of every single enchanted blade user. Like, if you were roasted for saying that we needed a flashback arc, those niggas don't know how to cook, bro. Any story structured like Kaguarabachi is begging for a flashback arc. Literally begging for it. These are the kinds of stories made for this. You can't have a story that has like weapons focus, that like the plot is centralized around like complicated weapons that are the equivalent of nukes, have a war be the backdrop to everything going on right now, and never go explore the war. That's stupidity. Like, and I mean, that's stupid. Why would we not explore the Seitei War? And why would you not want to explore the Seitei War? That's the other question. Why would you not want that? Why would you even manifest not doing that? You want to have this exploration. You want to see this. And like we get Shiba being an active combatant. Because at this point, I feel like Shiba is similar to Samura in that he's kind of slightly traumatized and doesn't like actively engaging in combat anymore, but does it because it's necessary. But we get to see Shiba when he clearly cared less about human lives. This, this is how you start an arc. No frills, no like apologies, no like we didn't even start with Chihiro. We didn't start this with anything else. We just started. All right, look, this is the opening lines. This is what we're doing. February 18th. We didn't even get a year. February 18th. I don't know. What does that mean? We don't even know. And then it's like, oh, a large island appears. And now you realize, oh, we're just straight up going into the. Arguing that we didn't get a flashback to the. Okay. I've said this once and I'll say it again. Gege and like Medulla proves it. Gege has a lot of ideas that he could expand upon, but it's very clear that he doesn't care to. That does not mean every author does. I'm sorry that Baby's first shonen was JJK, so you don't understand that like not every story is bound by the limitations that Jujutsu Kaisen has. But that's not how that works. Sometimes lore exists solely for backdrops. Other times it's a lot more crucial to the story. The lore in JJK just wasn't as important as the Seitei War is to what's going on here. The Heian era was just simply meant to be an era of prime jujutsu. And it just meant to tell you that people who were built different could come from the past. That's also why the Edo period characters show up. Hokusano opening Act 2 with the flashback arc is great. Because the thing is, like the Seitei War, whether it's a long or short, if it's a long arc, it can justifiably be the entirety of Act 2. The history of the world of Kaguarabachi. Yeah, the Seitei War is like the last 20 years. It precedes or was going on during Chihiro's like baby infancy. It's not 1,000 years in the past. Just huge false dichotomy. I am sorry you were fucking played with Tangerine. That's disrespectful. Also, like, your name being Tangerine instead of Mellow just really messes with me. See, and the thing with One Piece is that One Piece sometimes spends too much time explaining people's motives. So here's the thing. I like One Piece. Like this week's chapter of One Piece, phenomenal. I enjoyed it. I love and I love when we get these flashback arcs in One Piece because they do actually add a lot. But One Piece, okay, so let's real quick. You have JJK. Let's create a spectrum. JJK, which is a story centered around like modern sorcerers, and then like them being the pinnacle of jujutsu versus the previous era's pinnacle of jujutsu, and those ideologies colliding and like figuring out how to change jujutsu society for the better in the future. And like, we already know the previous versions are might makes right, traditionalism matters, blah blah blah. Like it's a very bare bones like traditionalist. It's either traditionalism versus progressivism, and not necessarily about like progressivism, but like do we keep evolving sorcery? You already see that there's cracks showing because you have techniques like Naobito's and Naoya's, which is really good. And like Naobito clearly got it because he was the superior sorcerer and he was able to be like become the clan head. But that was at odds with some of the other stuff within Jujutsu Society at large. And then you compare that to but like you don't need to care about all that stuff. Like the politics isn't as intrinsic to like the actual battle. Like it's called sorcery fight for a reason. It's centered around like breaking these things. And yes, you have these themes of Buddhism tied within, but it's not as important to your enjoyment of the story. Now, on the other hand, you have One Piece. One Piece is designed to be a modern day epic. Epics are stories that are filled with lore, filled with like they're all about the explorations and finding out the deep ties to like the gods and the mythos of that region, that era, that time period, however you want to describe it. Like you have epics, which are all about lore, which is like all an epic really is a giant lore dump about some people and all the shit that made the lore of those people become the lore of those people. So you have like a fucking like it's almost like a pyramid scheme of like lore drops that you have to get to make an epic function. Stories like Kaguarabachi, stories like My Hero Academia, they exist kind of like in the middle of the slide, a little more towards the right, towards the JJK spectrum, not like as intensely on that left side. Like for example, Undead Unluck would actually be a little more towards the One Piece side of things because we actually have a lot of like you have to get everybody's background to understand how they ended up with the curse that they did to understand their manifestation and why because their perspective influences their power. So like Billy's Unfair was originally influenced by the portrayals of his life, and then eventually in the second loop, it's influenced by like the positive relationships instead. That matters. So you have to get more lore drops so you can understand why they have the perspectives they do that influence their powers. And My Hero, you don't need that as much. Instead, you need to understand like what's going on right now in society, and then you need to understand the framework that got us there. Similar like to JJK. So you have different spectrums here. Like you have the more epic it gets, the more lore drops you need. The more tight and focused it is, the less lore drops you need, and sometimes the lore drops can just become a distraction. Am I making sense, chat? But that's the thing, right? Is that like Kagurabachi Act One is like 2, 3 years long. Like I don't necessarily need the Seitei War to be an entire arc or to be an entire act, but depending on how much detail we want to cover, because we have Shiba here, and if we're gonna go through the war, then we have to figure out also and explore what stopped them from getting to the island. Like what's like how they break the barrier, how many like what were the big shots, right? Because there's going to be big shot components that are on that island that are like true combatants and people who are pushing for Orishima to be protected to stop them from mining that ore. So there's a whole faction within there, whether they're good or bad, that we have to explore. Because ultimately, do I think the Japanese government is the good guys in this story? No. I actually do not think the Japanese government is the good guy in this story, especially because of the thing that we have with the Kamunabi, where they had basically somebody selling them out to the man. I'm so excited. I'm starting to like blank on names and stuff, but that's okay. Exactly. You cannot atone for the past if you do not understand the past. And all you have to do to tie this in is make this Shiba explaining it to Chihiro. That's it. As long as Shiba's explaining this to Chihiro, it works. As long as the characters of today are learning what happened in the past so that they can make sure they don't repeat these mistakes, it works. And like that's the other thing, right? Is that the best incorporation of this, like as this is happening into the modern day, is to have it be different people talking about what was going on in these eras. So, for example, this component can be with Shiba talking to Chihiro, and then Akamura Soga can be talking to some people, and then you have different people talking to like maybe Hakuri. Hiyuki would have realistically know something about this. Like, there's multiple characters who know about the Seitei War. There's multiple perspectives we should be getting. And even within this, we got like a 2 year jump because it's like the island appears, jump 2 years, talk about what's been going on for the past 2 years a little bit, just because it's not important. Like, they're not making real progress. They get a little bit of ore, get attacked. Like, that part isn't necessarily like they're just fighting shadows right now. Yeah, the similarities in their looks are like that's his daddy son. Like, and because the important part is to lead up to or get to the point where, and we know that Akamura Soga is already an adult or older or around Shiba's age here. They're both are teenagers. Also worth noting that Shiba's been at the pinnacle of sorcery for like 20 years. Up until now, every time we get an explanation about the war, it's from different characters' POVs. That would be a consistent way to do it. Exactly. So like we could just pop around, check different people's stuff, and see what's going on. We don't have to. Yeah, like we can always, or I won't say always, but we can consistently. Bro, Mama Soga Jeans did not fight back at all. But at least we know, like, what's going on here. This is actually like the most. See, okay. One of the things about Kaguarabachi is that every week it's my dessert, right? And I'm considering making the Sunday stream Ichi the Witch and Kagurabachi. Um, and like so, if that would appeal to y'all, let me know. But I kind of want to do both. But I always read Kagurabachi last. Every Sunday, Kagurabachi is what I read last. And this is why, because Kagurabachi gets me more excited than any other story that I'm reading currently. It's more excited than Chainsaw Man currently. It gets more excited than Dandadan. Gets more excited than everything else. Um, Yeah, the fact that like Kunishiga was just like a criminal making swords, it's not something that you necessarily expect, but it is a nice twist to his character because it kind of shows that like both of them have always kind of operated outside of the law for what they perceive as the greater good, and that's just something that Chihiro got from his dad. So it's a good way to characterize and like flesh out their relationship even without both of them being on screen together. Especially when you think about the fact that you almost feel like Chihiro has to parent his dad a lot of the time. And so a lot of what we hear Chihiro's dad saying is about how, oh, like you get this from your mom, blah blah blah. But we're seeing the similarities between the two, not just in looks, but in how they've always chosen their own path and gone for what they thought was right. And so when the Datsun Saki is going to be given to him next chapter, most likely, it's going to be like, well, am I supposed to be working with this? No. But am I going to be willing to do it? Yes. That's more or less how I expect it to go. And then he's going to give the sword to Soga, and which also makes me wonder if the a marriage between Rokuhira and the Soga clan was partially to protect Rokuhira, or as a means of making sure that like nobody went after him. Because if you already have Shiba as the guardian of the Soga clan, him marrying into that clan means Shiba's his guardian too, and you're not allowed to go. Like nobody's interested in going after the guy because you see this sorcerer in this chapter is like, oh, you're Shiba, I just lose. Like he didn't even try to fight. He just went like, okay, I lose. He's getting a cigarette stuck in his face, and it's still like, I'm not even gonna try. There's literally no point. So yeah, and now Chihiro's going to make those swords, and also, as far as I'm concerned, half the cutaways to Chihiro can just be him working on a sword, and I'll be happy. Like just randomly one chapter, uh, we don't see him for another 10 chapters. Next chapter we see him, don't see him for another 10. Uh, we don't see him again. That's fine with me. But nah, like this is how you set up a flashback arc. This is how you launch one. You give us what we're talking about, the Datsun Saki, getting more lore on that. You give us a conflict to care about, so we already know. You have the stakes of the because a lot of times people check out. I think what really makes people check out a flashback arcs is that what they tell themselves is, "I know how this ends, so what does it matter?" And they only value the destination. But in this case, we don't know most of what's going on. Obviously, we know that the war ends due to the Shinichi, due to the Magatsumi, blah blah blah. But we have so little context about the war, the government, what the politics were like, because sorcerers weren't public knowledge back then either. So there's so much extra context and like a whole different societal setting for us to explore, where this is still worth enjoying. And that's how you have to do it. Like you, but at that same time, when you do these flashbacks, right? Because like, let's go back to the JJK example. The Heian era flashback isn't as an era. Flashback isn't as important because the social settings from the current JJK to that version of like JJK society is so vastly different. There's not a whole lot of parallels you're actually going to be able to draw. It's basically people live on farms and it's war times. Majority of the population are farmers. You go to war. Maybe you know how to do sorcery. Maybe you travel and you kill things with your jujutsu and you move about your day. But there's not a whole lot to explore in a meaningful way or like to compare and contrast. All you're saying is like this is a more combative time. It's basically just going to be people running into each other and fighting sorcerers because they're worried about it. Exactly. Like why Soga said nah screw. And that's the thing is when people were like, "Oh, I think that's Baby Soga," I didn't think that was Baby Soga. You remember, I was like, I think that's Baby Chihiro. Started pointing out like the hair, the way the hair is drawn, and the similar like hairstyles, like the way the hair growth pattern worked. Um, and so I think the main thing that pushed Soga to go to genocide was the death of his sister. I think Chihiro's because there's a reason we never hear Chihiro's like the only person who talks about Chihiro's mom is Kunishiga. Nobody else. Kunishiga and Soga. Those are the only two people to really talk about his mom. So if those are the only two people to really talk about it, then I have no reason to believe that she was alive for a very long time. And I think the idea that she might have been killed as soon as they had, uh, or a little while after they had Chihiro, makes the most sense to me. Like to me, that makes the most sense. Chihiro is born. Like 6 months later, somebody from the island actually manages to makes a like truly offensive maneuver or offensive play, and ends up killing Chihiro's mom. And Soga goes, "Well, you gotta die." Because most of the time when somebody gets to those extremes, there's a catalyst where because the thing is like Soga is actually like has twisted nobility, right? When he's fighting Chihiro, when he's fighting Samura, he's like, "Hey, Shiba's been evacuating people. I know." Which keep in mind, he does not attack Shiba, who was actively evacuating people. He lets Shiba do that, even though he knows Shiba's on the other side. So he lets Shiba protect the Japanese citizens from their battle. And then he tells Samura and Chihiro, 250-meter radius, that is our battleground. If you leave, slit your belly. So, if he's that noble, then it makes sense to me. The thing that made him go, "Oh, I'm just going to be willing to kill your civilians," is if civilians he cared about died. I mean, her being alive could be interesting. It's just then we have to figure out why she wasn't with them, why she never like put any effort to find Chihiro, and like yes, moms can abandon their children, but it creates like a like you get a lot of questions about who she is as a person, and it feels weird for her to be from a clan with Soga that's so honorable and be okay with abandoning her child, unless she's like in super witness protection, or maybe she's the female sword bearer that we see, because we still haven't explored who that is yet. But then it's harder to figure out a logical reason based on the tools we've been given on why Ahsoka snapped. Why? What you talking about, little baby? What are you looking for? What are you looking for, Jeannie? The pillow? Yeah, there's a pillow on the chair. You're so silly, little baby. But yeah, like I see what you mean though. Like it would be kind of interesting to get, and like I do think it sucks to always have like the orphan character. It is a nice change of pace when characters get to keep their parents. Uh, but in this case, it just if we want to have Soga have an even kind of reasonable snapping point, we gotta he's got to lose something, right? And you can't just snap just cause. Like maybe they had a different sibling, but there was an arm next to a baby. So to me, that signals at most, at minimum, dismemberment. So even if she's off alive somewhere with one arm, or she got the arm back and just like was like, nope, I'm going into hiding. I never want to deal with any of this again. I've been like super traumatized, and she's just like hospitalized, healed up somewhere, which also would be really messed up on Shiba's part. Would add some extra layers to his character though. Would add a layer to his character, so we could have that. She's more or less sealed away. Uh, yeah, we think. What I also like about this though, and I love when this happens in anything that I'm reading. I like having ideas about what's happening in the next chapter, but having no real like reasonable reason why I could say this is what's happening next chapter. Outside of the fact that we know we should be getting some kind of interaction between Shiba and Kunishiga. That's it. Like once those two talk, if that's a whole chapter, cool. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a full dialogue chapter. I'm a lore drop guy. Like I love lore drops anyway. I like getting the history of stuff. So if that's the direction we go, I'm okay with that. But I don't think there's like the story currently has a lot of routes it gets to explore, and I'm always excited for that. The important part for me and for all readers to remember, though, is that a story is not obligated to explore every avenue that you think it needs to explore. It's not obligated to do that. It is obligated to at least explore some of the story, but there may be things you value that are not as important. Like if we don't get any Hiyuki in this backstory, okay, Hiyuki's just not that important. But what I do want is at least a weapon like Flame Bone in the backstory so we can get more context on how magical weapons are made, especially because something like Flame Bone is supposed to be on the level of an enchanted blade. And to me, yes, it makes sense for Kunishiga to be a swordsmith, to sit there and craft weapons, blah, blah, blah. But there has to be something that made him believe it was possible to make one of these nuke blades. So him having some context of other crafted magical weapons in the time period is the one thing that to me makes the most sense. So whatever that inspiration is, I would love to find it, love to see it in here. And I think that being the thing that ties like Soga and Kudashiga together is the thing that like sets the whole story in motion effectively, right? Uh man. Yeah. Final thoughts on this chapter. I'm gonna do something that I normally don't do, and I'm gonna say I actually do give this chapter a 10 out of 10. It's a crazy ass like intro. It does it without being overly violent. It's not a flashback that relies on just oh yeah, let's murder a bunch of people and da da da. No, it has very contextual violence. It's setting up for important lore. It expounds upon the social state of the world around him, and we get an idea of how Shiba operated before he was attached to the hip to Chihiro and trying to work as a guardian for Chihiro specifically. So we also know that like we're getting more Shiba lore just all around. Yeah, and that's the thing is that like we're finally going to see like who Sheba really is because we don't really get enough focus on Sheba as a character. And I won't say we don't get enough. We've clearly been saving Sheba for this moment, for this backstory, so that we can explore him properly. It's very hilarious and painful that not adhering to protocol is, in fact, the lore reason for so many disasters, both in stories and in real life. Looking at you, Hurricane Katrina Levies. So, man, like just we're gonna learn more about the people on the island. We're gonna get to see because they and then we see like they created all these complex lies. So we also get to see more about like how involved the Japanese government was with sorcerers before they were public. So there's just so many social circumstances that are being explored that is just insane. Right, and it's a good way to reset because we had this crazy high octane battle arc where you had people losing limbs left and right. You had Uruha doing stuff. You had all these movements going on, like the brother of the Cloud Gouger user, just all these characters coming into play, and now we get just a slowdown, and it's gonna pick up obviously because we're heading into a war, but no good war arc just starts and it is strictly violence. We get to see the process and the thoughts of people as they move into this war and how it fundamentally shifts them and creates the perspectives that we see today from Soga's perspective to Shiba's perspective to why Kudashiga did what he did for the rest of his life. Just every sword user, even like Samura, right? We know he was supposed to be the medic, but we may find out that that man was just dropping bodies left and right. So just all of this beautiful context to really flesh out these characters and make this story something worth exploring. And I've always thought it was more than just like a John Wick revenge story. And I always think it's a shame that it like billed itself as that in the beginning. But now we're really getting paid off, and I feel like we're being properly rewarded for sticking around and wanting to support this story and enjoying it and reading it. And I'm so glad this manga beat the memes. Uh, I don't really have anything more to say right now off the top of my head. That would be just me repeating myself. So I'm gonna take that as a sign that the stream should end about here. We've been going for 50 minutes. I'll take that. 50-minute stream by myself is always. I'm always surprised when I can pull it off, especially when it's just like a manga yap stream. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for coming through. Mello, Camber Bailey. I feel like there was a lurker here that never said anything, but that's okay. Alves, I know you were here too, so appreciate you guys always for transitioning with me into the Kaguarabachi streams. Uh, but yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here. I'll see you guys next Sunday. Unless I happen to be working, but I don't know how that's gonna go. We'll see. Um, I might do Don tomorrow and Chainsaw Man on Tuesday just for the sake of doing more streams. And I've been reading those manga for a long time, so why not? But yeah, appreciate you guys stopping by. Peace. Well, I shouldn't even bother doing peace that way because